Let's come to the second old school pugilistic fighter video. One of my favourites actually since a kid. I always used to go up to where he was born. It used to be old Plimlico in Brighton, but now it's Orange Row and Titchbourne Street. They're both there, and it's just basically where the houses are on the edge of them two roads. And that was where he was born, Tom Sayers, in Brighton, May 25th, 1826. He obviously went up to London way and lived that way, but it was always a place I used to visit as a kid, go up on a bike, cycle quite a few miles there. But now after quite a few years, they got a plaque there. The British Border Control, Boxing Border Control, put a little plaque up near the guitar amp shop. If you're ever in that area, you can always see that. But we're going to go straight into Tom's story. Be quite a lot on him actually as we go. I'm going to do a basic video to start. So, as we said, born in Brighton, May 25th, 1826. He was 5'8.5" and 152 pounds. I've heard he was lighter, 147 pounds, but yeah, obviously it's a long time ago. You get different fights. He might have weighed lighter, etc. So he's always given away weight. Generally, there was no weight divisions then, and one of the most renowned and respected prize fighting heroes. There's a bit of debate whether this, when he fought Heenan, it was for the first world title, because Heenan come from the United States. It's horses of courses, really. Yeah, you had this sort of English champion. You could say even back to James Figgy, he was regarded as a world champion because the English champion was like the world champion. There's lots of debate with this. Some say Molyneux Crib was the first one before this, where you had a black slave coming over, fought for his freedom, and then come over here to fight Tom Cribb, which is before this. And you had Bill Richmond, etc. There were again Jem Mace went abroad as well and fought. But again, let's just come back to Tom Sayers. So his record, again, they vary, obviously, in history. Sometimes, if I hear anything else, I'll put it in. But as far as I know, the total of his fights was 16. He won 12. One loss, that was to Nat Langham, which he was called the light tapper, Nat Langham, which I'll go into detail later, and 3 draws. Long, drawn-out affairs, these. And he was one of the most renowned characters of the day. To dress up very fancy, etc. He was buried at Highgate Cemetery in London, and there's a little sort of statue of him and his dog on his gravestone. When did he die? He died in 1865. He started out, he was a bricklayer, working as a bricklayer on a roadway bridge and many other things. There was an argument with a fellow workman, and that resulted in a impromptu scrap that was halted by the foreman. If you want to fight, go to London, he said. Tom took his word and he did it, and the rest was history. The rest was history then. He was then 22. His first match was a couch at Greenhithe, I'm not butchering that, Greenhithe, on March the 19th, 1849. He was beaten in 13 minutes. News of his ability spread though, even from his losses, and 19 months passed before he could induce Dan Collins to fight. On October the 22nd, 1850. They fought 9 rounds, 27 minutes. Obviously, we know a round today as, say, a 3-minute round. Amateurs, it's 2 minutes, etc. Obviously, rounds then generally started when someone come up to scratch, brought on rules on that happened. So again, a round could be like a couple of seconds. It could be an hour. So again, the round ended when someone come up to scratch. They had 30 seconds to come up to the scratch line, and that was they'd get a rest. They'd sit on the knees of their seconds who were on the ground kneeling, and then come back. That'd be the next round. So he fought Dan Collins. I digress. It was 9 rounds, 27 minutes at Edinburgh. Then the police arrived, as it did happen a lot, and happened in one of his big fights later on when he fought Heenan. But this one, the police arrived, so they continued the contest at Red Hills. They found another destination and fought another 39 rounds. So it was 1 hour, 52 minutes before darkness fell, and it was a draw. It was declared a draw. So that's why he's got 3 draws in his record. They're obviously long, drawn-out fights, and he had a lot of durability, Tom. His next 4 bouts covered 3 years. Dan Collins was beaten at Longreach in 44 rounds. That's 84 minutes. And Jack Grant lasted 64 rounds, 2.5 hours. Jack Martin was stopped in 23 rounds, which was 55 minutes. And on October the 18th, 1583, he was outsmarted by Nat Langham. He's called the Light Tapper. I think from what I read, he was one of them fighters. He's very good at bending the rules. A lot of them should take a knee, and that'll be the end of the round. You get a lot of fighters used to last a long time before sort of other rules come in, etc. down the line. But that was at Lakeheath, and he closed both of Sayer's eyes, Nat Langham, and he given after 61 rounds. That was 2 hours and 2 minutes, 61 rounds. Nat Langham beat Tom Sayers. It was Sayers' only loss, and other than the 3 draws, and he was soon back in favour, beating George Sims in 4 rounds. That was 5 minutes he beat him. On January 29th, 1856, he defeated Harry Paulson at Appledore, Kent, in 109 rounds. That was 3 hours and 8 minutes. And he kept busy the following year with 4 bouts, beating Aaron Jones over 85 rounds. That was 2 hours. And Bill Perry, 10 rounds. He beat Bill Perry over 10 rounds, which was 1 hour 42 minutes for the Championship of England. Some used to, now in history, some regard that as like the first world title. But again, that's another subject, very varied. And he beat Bob Brett over 7 rounds, 15 minutes. He also boxed 62 round, 3 hour draw with Aaron Jones. He had a lot of long fights. Sayers continued victoriously stopping Bill Benjamin in 3 rounds, 6. Then again, so we got some short fights here, 6.5 minutes over 3 rounds. Tom Paddock, another good fighter. Never got a title, I don't think, Tom Paddock, for what I remember. 21 rounds, 1 hour and 20 minutes. And Benjamin again in 11 rounds. That was 22 minutes. A year went by, and in which time arrangements were made for staging a great international match with John C. Heenan of America. And it attracted enormous public interest in England, as it was announced that they would fight for the championship of the world. So again, it varies what you read, but I would personally say it was like the first world title. You know, some would say it was Mallett crib. Yeah, but I digress. So Heenan had all the advantages, as most of the time with Sayers being very small. He was a younger man by 7 years and had 5.5 inches on Sayers and was 43 pounds heavier. On paper it was no match, but Sayers had 10 times more ring know-how, which made up for everything else. It made up for everything else there. They met at Farnborough, Kent, before an estimated 12,000 people. So that's something else, because again, it was a bit like a sort of rave. You know, they'd have to move the destination, make sure the police wouldn't, you know, interrupt it, which happened in this fight, as many times it did. But that's a lot, 12,000, with many distinguished personages among the assembly, newspaper reporters from both sides of the Atlantic. So it really was the first world title, I think. But they fought for 2 hours and 20 minutes. But after the 37th round, the fight became a shambles due to the ring being broken. Echoes of what happened years ago with Molyneux when he was robbed against Cribb in the first fight. But again, I digress. But yeah, the 37th fight actually comes to shambles. The ring was broken into, and after 5 more rounds it ended with Heenan having his opponent over the ropes. Classic picture of him with his hand on his throat against the ropes. But again, like they had like posts in the grounds for the corners of the ring. I'm not sure if it was against the post or the ropes, but again, he had his hand on his throat, you know, over the rope. It was over the ropes, yeah, from what I remember, ready to punch him. Classical to the, yeah, which is not allowed obviously now. And in the shambles, the ring being broken into, after 5 more rounds it ended, Heenan having his opponent against the ropes, in danger of strangling him. The crowd surged in and the fight was abandoned. It was declared a draw and both men received a silver belt, emblematic of a title. So for me, that was a first world title, but some will disagree. I'll look more into it and add more videos to that. Sayers did not fight again, and on his death, he was buried at Highgate Cemetery beneath a magnificent memorial. Like I say, it had like his dog, he's one of his companions. He used to have a top hat, Sayers, and you know, a bit like sort of Chris Eubanks today. They were a real smart dresser. But again, I'm reading the Jem Mace book, which is great at the moment, and it's about him and Heenan and Sayers, Heenan and Mace all going out and drinking in Brighton. But I'll add more as we go. So yeah, that's the second video. And yeah, I mean, Sayers was a shoemaker and his wife Maria, 10 years his husband senior, 10 years her husband senior, Maria his wife, and at ages 6 Tom actually become a jack in the water, earning a few coppers, performing small duties, holiday makers and fishermen here on Brighton Beach. Claims that he attended school in 1836. Maybe they're unfounded. This is a long time ago. At age 13, he went to London, where he stayed with his sister Eliza and her husband Robert King, a builder. Says again, that was a story about when he was a bricklayer. Next 7 years, he was shuttled between home and the capital. He is known to have worked at the London Road Viaduct outside Brighton and may well have taken part in the construction of London's King's Cross station. anecdote of his earlier years, it was reported that whilst working on construction in Wandsworth Prison, he was struck by his supervisor, described as a big bully. This is another description of what happened. And returning the blow, it was decided to carry on the fight at a nearby common, where after a tremendous battle, Sayers prevailed, knocking out the adversary. In 1846, he settled in the capital, taking up residence in the notorious slum of Agartown, just north of St Pancras Station, where that now stands. It was around 1847 that he set up home in a more salubrious part of Camden Town with Sarah Henderson, only 15 years old. Sarah was unable to marry him without her father's permission, and her daughter Sarah and son of Tom by Sayers were constantly illegitimate for them times. Funny times them. I think I'll leave it there for the first one, but again, leave it at that fight with Heenan, Tom C. Heenan. I'm going to do one on him next as well, and definitely add more to Sayers, because there's a lot to say on him. But again, one of my favourite old-time pugilist fighters, Tom Sayers. Bang.